Yeah, we're live. Sporting some BTR gear here. Like I said, if it wasn't for the generosity of people, I would really have no wardrobe. This one came from the guys at Brian Dooley Racing. So shout out to those guys. Today was very cool. Excuse me, very busy, lots of stuff going on. But I got to get out of the house, go visit Oliver, the gentleman that won. I want to say kid that won the Nova, and helped him pull the. We had previously, when we were working on the suspension, pulled the trans out of the Nova, and then to get it ready to basically pull the turbo diesel out, because the turbo diesel in the Nova is leaking. The rear main, I guess, is bad, and so it's a bit of a job to fix that. You can't just take the trans out and fix it. So I think you have to take the crank out, which is as you might know, it's a little time consuming. But that motor's coming out and something else is going in. So it will. I'm hoping that something goes in, and that we, the plan is that we can put something in it that's cool, and do kind of do some step-by-step stuff for the channel. And then I like the back-to-back kind of data, so it'd be cool to be able to do, hey, here's what happened when we put this combination in there and then another combination. Lots of guys like seeing the dyno results, and I love dyno stuff, but it would also be cool to be able to drive it or take it to the track and do something fun with it, even if you start out running 16s. If it has like a trophy 4-cylinder in it or whatever, and you go out and it has a 308 gear and a 3-speed trans or whatever, and a stock inverter, and you go out and take it out, it's just like running a stock motor on the dyno. That's where you start. That's your starting point. And then you do something else. Well, what happens if we put gear in it? What happens if we put converter in it? What happens if we put a camshaft in it? What happens if we put all those things in it? What happens if we put 100 shot on it? Maybe 150. We're at the track already. That kind of thing. And then you can see what it does. That way, it's not just, hey, we gained 112 horsepower or whatever. It went from a 1640 down to a 1580 when we did this. And so that, that's knocking off a chunk of time. Plus, it's like a day at the dyno, a day at whether it's a drag strip or an autocross course or a road course or the Bonneville or the Silver State or whatever. If you're out there doing like cool car stuff, doing burnouts, whatever, that's always great stuff. So I'm looking forward to that. So I told them, obviously, no problem. I'll come over and help that, and I can turn a wrench or two. And we got that out, no problem. It was really quick. And while we were there, he also took a look at my truck, because I'm trying to get it ready to do the big haul essentially across the United States, 2,500 miles worth or so. So I want to make sure that the truck is in good shape, and it's got some issues. So he was able to diagnose a few things. I actually had him drive it so he could, it's much better if you're behind the wheel and you can go, oh yeah, I definitely feel that. You can feel stuff in the steering if you cognizant of this kind of stuff. You can feel stuff in vibrations in the steering wheel. You can feel movement. You can feel chattering. You can feel stuff pulsing in the brakes if that's happening. You can feel scrubbing when you turn. You can feel that much better rather than having somebody try to explain that to you, even if the person knows what it is and what might be the cause of it, or how at least has suggestions. It's better to do it yourself. So I let him take it for a ride, and so we could talk about all the things that I already know was going on with the truck. Because, when you drive something you're behind the wheel for 7, 8, 10 hours a day, whatever, I had a phone ringing in there. that wasn't it. You get a feel for what's going on. And so we were able to do that. And turns out it's got a few things. One, it actually had a couple of, and somebody mentioned this in the live feed, it had a couple of coolant leaks. One was, and somebody mentioned this, the fitting up by the heat exchange or the heater core. And so I'm happy that it wasn't the heater core on the inside, that it was the fittings on the outside, which are plastic, and they tend to corrode, and this did. And so we fixed that, only to find out that the rest of that hose has another plastic T fitting down at the bottom, was also leaking. So we just ended up changing the whole hose assembly. The thing also looks like it needs, it's super, super bouncy. These are the original shocks that are in it, 311,000 miles. It needs shocks. It also needs front wheel bearings. Those are bad. Tie rod end, I think. And the brakes seem like they're pretty good. So, you know, all in all, it just needs some love. The other thing that it needs, and I need to find these, I'm sure that they're online, is a passenger side door handle and maybe even the door panel assembly, because that's now broken, flopping around and stuff. So I've got to get one of those. That's not super important for driving because more than usually nobody's over in the passenger side anyway. But the other things definitely are. So you want to make sure that we have those things. I already did an oil change before I left for VTEC, and all that seems to be working out. Although it does seem to be using oil, so I'll want to make sure that I keep some with me. I think that that's fairly normal for something that has this kind of mileage on it. Australia's in the house. So that we got to spend the day doing that, which is cool. So we figured out all the stuff. We're going to order that stuff up, and then I'll bring it back over, and we'll do some swapping, which would be good. And I'm also excited about the Nova, so we get to do some things with that because it wouldn't have made any difference to me who won it as long as they were the right kind of person, and that's why I made the caveats when I did the giveaway that you have to come get it and pick it up, and it has to be running in 30 days. So that the right kind of person would do it, and it turns out that it was, and the fact that he's not too far away is fairly convenient. I don't know that I would drive across the country, you know, just to, if you know, you got to go help guys out, but driving all the way across the country to help somebody pull the motor out is a whole nother thing. Kind of, it's just way too time consuming. But if it's a few hours or whatever, a day here, a day there, then it's not too big of a deal. But it would be cool to get an LS or a small block or a big block or whatever it is in there and get it running so that it could make some passes down the quarter mile, because that's kind of cool stuff. The truck is working, and it will be working even better and hopefully ready for a long trip to take the GLH back to GLH paradise back in Ohio. That will be, you know, if you've been racing or done this kind of thing, the road trip stuff is always an adventure. You never know what you're going to meet out on the road, what's going to happen to your vehicle, the kind of people that you're going to see, you know, because we're going to be frequenting. I think I like to stop at truck stops because they always have good stuff there. So, you know, I may stop and even sleep in there. We've done that when we were racing World Challenge because we didn't have hotel money. So, but we had truck stop kind of money. So we would pull in and just sleep in the truck, you know. So there may be some of that. You know, I'm not opposed to that. I slept on the floor and in cots and stuff down at VTEC, and slept out on the road when we're racing, and so it'll be like, you know, it'll be like coming home. So that will be an adventure, and it'll be super cool. My goal is to go back, get the motor and trans in and get it running and drive it. And that's the goal for when I go back there. And, you know, obviously I just want to see, I almost want to bring a boost gauge back with me, just so that we can do boost gauge videos. So it'll be cool. T, put the aluminum 5.3 in your truck. I'm seriously considering that. This motor has a lot of miles on it. It is using oil. It's got it has, I think, 2 bolts missing on one of the exhaust manifolds. So that would have to come out, and, you know, you weld the nut on there and spin it off. I've shown videos of that, of Troy doing that on the 4.8 that we were putting together. That would have to be done. It needs a new front cover seal. That's leaking. So, you know, it'd almost make more sense to take it out and put another one in there where all that's done and it was freshened up and kind of ready to go. The 5.3 would be good. Although I would almost rather have an iron one in there. The aluminum one I care about too much, and it'd be cooler if we put it in something that was more lightweight than the truck. I honestly don't care about the weight change in the truck. In fact, what I would like to do is get this truck, do all this stuff to this truck, and then either trade it or sell it and buy another one. When I was thinking about swapping a motor in, what I would like is a 4.8, because I don't really do too much towing, although I say that as I'm putting the truck together to go tow, but I'm using a tow dolly and stuff. And the car that I'm towing is a car that doesn't have an engine in it, that only weighed about 6 or 8 pounds dripping wet anyway. So it's not that it's loaded really hard. But ideally, for mostly, I have a truck for the trips to VTEC and carrying motors from the wrecking yard and things like that. And I don't need a 4-wheel drive 5.3, full-size Silverado for that. But if I was staying with a full-size Silverado, a 2-wheel drive with a 4.8 in it would be my choice. That's what I wanted anyway when I was looking for this. But because my Civic got stolen and I had to get home, I had to take kind of what was available around me and in the time constraints. And this truck has been really good. It's served me very well. But I would like a 2-wheel drive 4.8, which would be kind of cool. Why not have the flat tappet lifters refaced and surface hardened? That could be done. Or since it's just a Pontiac lifter, we could just put Pontiac lifters in it, put new Pontiac lifters in it. Chris, I didn't see what your question was. I'll just scroll back and see if there's something there that. Yeah, Tim, those hands are from a man that works for a living. That's a machine shop guy. That's Dave. He definitely works. He's got land speed cards and stuff. He's a super cool guy. Oh, Casey's here officially. We can start. So we were waiting for you the whole time. The transmission fluid was not flushed yet. I did change the oil though. So am I halfway there? We did check the transmission fluid, and luckily there is transmission fluid in it. BW saw by my place in Illinois. That's just right on the way, right? I'm in Toledo. I have plenty of room on my garage floor. Is it nice and cozy too? At least it's fairly nice. It was much nicer where we were working on the truck in the Nova. It was a lot cooler. Coming back home, it was, I think it was like 85 where we were, and then we came back, and because I was thinking 85, I'm going to go for a run. This will be nice. And then I got back, it's 101. I'm like, that's still pretty warm. I can't believe they would use different lifters in the half of 389 than the 389 itself. It's not. It's just a 389. It's just a Pontiac lifter. In fact, you can use LS lifters in this half of 389 also. Zach, I just saw his comment was, speaking of land speed, I'm sure you know some guys were at Bonneville and would tell you firsthand about the rain this year. I saw the photos and I saw the lake that it turned into, and that's fairly normal. I've been out there when that happens before. And I know that I'm pretty sure that the meet was canceled, right? If you're going through the central part of the state, you'll go right by me. I think my route takes me Highway 80, I'm thinking. I've heard towing with a 460 in overdrive is what kills them. I've towed our boat when I had the boat a lot in overdrive. I didn't even have it in tow haul, and worked out just fine. Come on. Yeah, you're freaking out on me. I'm all fuzzy. There. Is that so hard? Hi, I'm new to this, but is a Lopi idle still good for daily driving? It depends on whether that Lopi idle bothers you for a daily driver. That's kind of up to you. It makes it a little harder for the tune if you have a cam that has a lot of chop in it. I've got a set of coveted Delphi flat tappet lifters I'm saving for a rainy day. There is some lifters, I think, at VTEC that have been around a really, really long time, flat tappets. I'm from the Midwest. I didn't know that was a common occurrence for Bonneville to get rained out like that. Yeah, it's actually it's a lake. We race on a dry lake, and we race when it's dry, but it's not always dry for most of the year. There's water there. How much would it cost to have a cam made for a 1981 Pontiac 4.9 liter turbo? I think that that's just a Buick. I mean, that's just a Pontiac cam. I don't think that there's anything different about that motor. I think that there's lots of cams available for that. BW, I'll have to see where I haven't gone through and mapped it out. I just did a map search for from here to here, and it was this long, and so that's what I was looking at. Larry, for the comment, I'm just going to make you keep waiting for the poll. Current thinking on roller cam bearings. Does blocking off oil feed to leave them more oil for the mains way into using them still? I've never used roller cam bearings, so I might be the wrong guy to ask. If Dan's here later, he may have tried. They may have tried those in some of the stuff that he has. TA Performance only uses a Comp XE252 for a turbo 4.9. I doubt that that's the case, but that's not the only cam that will work on a turbo 4.9. There are lots and lots of cams that will work. If I'm climbing up a grade in this transmission, we would be in a lower gear, because I'm not going to go full throttle at 2,000 RPM and keep it in overdrive. In fact, it's gonna shift down by itself. I don't even have to manually do it. It's gonna unlock first, and then it's gonna drop down a gear, because it does that anyway. Even if I just have an engine or two in the back of the truck and I'm going up the grapevine, and if I set the cruise control, like I'd say, I set this cruise control at 70 miles an hour going up the grapevine, it downshifts by itself, so it won't lug it in overdrive. High pressure, high volume pump for a 550 horse 408 LS3 NA. You got to tell me more about the motor than that. And honestly, I'm not sure I know what the difference is between those pumps. I mean, I know what volume is and I know what pressure is, but I don't know how you increase one without increasing the other. Larry, you got time? You got nothing but time on your hands? Steve, what was your thing that was stock? Oh, yeah, but your 4.9 turbo. What you need, you could put a camshaft in it. You could port the head. More boost obviously is a good idea. I don't think that thing came with an intercooler, so an intercooler would be a good idea. And if you could, was that thing a blow through carbureted deal? I think it was, wasn't it? Maybe E85. I don't know if you can get up jetting to it though. Yeah, Casey, this is a dolly, and this car has got to weigh nothing with the engine trans out of it, so it's going to be pretty light. When am I going to go through my local junkyards? I don't know. I won't be able to leave for a couple of days, so I might be able to hit some up. Richard, have you ever done a street bolt-on 307 test? I've never dyno tested a 307 that I can remember. I don't think I have. I don't even remember seeing one up on the dyno at VTEC, that specific combination. 305s, 302s, 283s, probably variants of the 283, also two overboard versions. Maybe all the way up to a 301 that they would have done back in the day. 327s, and then variants of those that are 30 over, 40 over. I don't think we've done too many 60 overs. 350s, 383s, 372s, 400s, 406s, but I don't remember doing a 307. Foreigns in the house. Everybody say hi to Oliver and his engineless Nova. I know they use a different bypass spring and high pressure pumps. The Engine Masters guys, and Brule was telling me about it. They did a test recently, and I don't know if the video is up or the TV show is up, where they tested a high pressure and a high volume and a high pressure and high volume and maybe a stock pump to show. They were looking to see what the pressure differences were, but there were also power differences, which you would expect. It's if you have to process, if you're thinking about it as a big paddle wheel, if you're having to process more liquid, it's harder on it, and it does cost power. Barry, my tow dolly gets a little bit squirrely if the car doesn't have a motor in it when I'm towing. So it wants a little bit of weight on there. High pressure is a spring, and high volume, the gears are actually longer. I know that the gear-rotor gear actually is thicker on the high volume pump, but my point is I know that, and I know the spring, we can jack the spring up to change the pressure. My point is that when you do either one of those, the end result in the motor is more pressure. The draw through. Oh, so the 301's a draw through, right? Yeah, it's a draw through carbureted deal, right? So you could put a different carburetor on there, something that you could put jetting in. I don't know how much jetting you could get in the factory carburetor, but to do E85, an E85 turbo would love that. Oh, no way to intercooler. A couple of 55-gallon drums. I can put 55-gallon drums and then just buy the cheapest fuel somewhere, right? We just built a 307 with bolt ported 416 heads, 194, 474 cam. Where am I at? Oh, he took it down. Okay, so now we can get a poll up. now that Larry's ready. So in honor of our 307 question, is the 307 Chevy, small block Chevy, a better engine to build than a 305? Boom, and our poll is up. Is the transmission axle still in the car? Will you be tow dolly? It's a tow. Where I have a tow dolly, and the axles are not in the car. Are not in there right now. Fanatic. The Big Block Mopar test is different than the one that they just did. They did that one before, but now they did an LS. Richard, how much does it bother you when an engine uses oil? I didn't even realize this one was doing that, but like I said, considering this thing has 310,000 miles or 311,000 miles, I don't want to sell it short. It doesn't bother me that much. Ice Group Garage did a mile 307. 307, when people do 307 builds, unless they're crazy like me and go seek it out, usually a 307 build is we had this or inherited this, or when we went to the wrecking yard and grabbed a small block Chevy, it turned out to be this. which those are all like perfectly legit reasons to have a 307, and I'm 100% behind that. But the 307 is an interesting combination, and probably not as prevalent as the 305, because they would, for a long time, Chevrolet went to the 305 as their performance variant. And I think the poll for tomorrow night will be, should I run Oliver has an L69 305. So the question for tomorrow will be, should I run the L69? Because it's all stock. And I think it's fairly low mileage too. Steel crank, pink rods, 202 heads. You're not going to find too many 307s that were factory equipped like that. Michael, I'm right off 80 in Illinois. If you need to crash or help with the trip, thanks. .307 bore for the win. I think you get more torque out of a 305 simply because of the stroke. Slap a 350 crank in there. 307 olds. There you go. They're just thinking outside the box. Zach, the transaxle is not in there. The engine and transaxles are transaxle are gone out of the car. They're not in there. Have you done a side-by-side comparison between a roller versus a non-roller cam using identical specs? What specs do you want to be identical? Because the ramp rate's not going to be identical on a roller cam versus a flat tapping cam. And so you could get the lift and duration and LSA the same, but the shape of the cam is going to be completely different. But I think that test has been done. I haven't done that. I think that the guys from Engine Masters or VTEC have done that. The HO, the L69 was 190 horsepower. Every 307 I've seen had a 2-barrel, but we could look that up and see if it ever came with that. Operating engineer, 307, stock short block, new rings and bearings, 274. 274 is a good cam, 416 heads. Oh, if they're ported, yeah, 300 is, you're gonna soar right by 300. Mike, this is an interesting question. If you look at my Facebook post or my Instagram post, actually they're both, we did make a solid lifter out of a hydraulic one just by inserting a nut into it so that we could do valve lash. But I was thinking about the possibility of sliding an insert in the lifter to make it into a solid. Then I was wondering, would that be something that we would want to try? But it is possible, because it just has to be solid. And actually the lifter and the rocker and stuff would hold it in place. It doesn't even have to be, secured in there, I don't think. I don't even think it would have to be clipped in there. I think it would actually stay in there, maybe. $38750. I have the I thought I had all of the. Okay, so here's all the small blocks. The 307 is 38750 by 3250. So it's a 327 stroke and a bore for the 283, which has the most stock compression in stock form. I think a 305 was in the 9s, in the low to mid 9s on the HO motor or on the TPI motor. That's probably as high as it ever got. Have you ever seen a big horsepower gain from ignition upgrades? No, I have not. Yeah, I have seen power gains from an ignition upgrade where it cured a misfire. Sometimes you can do that with just plug gap. But if you cure a misfire, then yeah, power can happen. But otherwise, that if it's firing and doing its job, I've never seen more spark energy do anything. So we're about 50-50, 48% saying yes, the 307 is better than the 305, and 52% no. 52% 305, guys. I like the L69. I like the 305 TPI. That's the LB9. VTEC 305 is great. Yep. Serviceable engines. Brian, my friend's J20 has a rowdy 304 in it. Stock, but sounds cammed. Yeah, you just got to pull a plug wire off. Then it's got that cammy sound. Mike, I think Mahovas could. We didn't even need to do steel. I don't think. I think you could turn down some aluminum and stick it in there. Some T6 stuff probably would work. Certainly work for the dyno. Karlov, putting 305 heads on 350 was an old school way that guys were doing to raise the compression because the chambers were smaller on them. I don't know what the 307 Oldsmobile came in. Yeah, Oliver, if you look at the way that they build a lot of those lifters, they're using the outer body as the same thing. My vote was for the 305 because I thought you were talking about the 307 Olds. No, the 307 Chevy. So we have for Chevys, we had a 262, a 265, a 267, a 283, a 302, a 305, 307, 327, 350, and 400. I was looking at Stan Weiss's head flow catalog. That's a good page. If you guys haven't ever gone to that, Stan Weiss has got a lot of good information on lots of different cylinder heads. 305 L30 VTEC heads flow pretty nice. Yeah, and the 350s, I think the L31 flows even better. But the VTEC heads flow nice, especially the mid-lift flow. The Pontiac, the thing that I would really want to know is what your bearing clearances are. Oliver, you want to swap all those small blocks into the Nova? Just have them all sitting there. What would be cool is if you could get like the highest horsepower stock versions of all of those. The 4.3 liter, the L99, is not a 264. It's a 262 or a 263. I think, unless I'm not rounding up properly. Rounding up or rounding down. Flat top pistons really woke up my LO3. 20 miles per gallon is really good. Richard, I saw the Engine Masters where the guys were testing oil fill amount versus oil pressure. All this talk about LS guys running dry from high volume pumps. I think that's from people overfilling the oil. Well, if they were overfilling it, why would they run dry? Wouldn't the reverse of that happen? And the test, at least the discussion we've had at VTEC about the pan running dry, usually that's Ford running a high volume pump on a Ford with a factory pan can make that happen. The discussion about the pumps for the LS stuff is there are a bunch of different pumps made by who's the pump manufacturer? Well, not overall. Who is the pump manufacturer? Somebody throw the name out there. Anyway, whoever they are, they make a bunch of different versions of the milling, of the gerotor pump for LS applications, depending on whether it's a DOD or VVT or all these things. And so they have a bunch of these different spec pumps. So they wanted to try a bunch of different ones, and that's what it ended up being. This a standard LS or LM7 pump or whatever. And then they had versions of these that were high pressure and high volume, and then high pressure and high volume for, I guess the guy that wants 140 PSI of oil pressure in there. Overfilling creates problems. We see that a lot in big block stuff. It creates windage issues, and then the oil, actually overfilling is bad too. You lose power and you lose oil pressure. So it's not a good situation. The 262 was a 3.1 stroke and a 3671 is what they have. Yep, Mellings, we got that. So I haven't looked at that data yet, but Brule was telling me about it while I was down there. I would like to take a look at it because he said some of the pressures were just some of the LS stuff anyway, even a stock pump, if you have a good motor, even some of the ones we get from the wrecking yard, if the motor's cold and you rev it up, it's not unusual for it to be 80, 90, even 100 PSI. And on some of these bigger pumps, it was way beyond that. It was like 140 or so. .3, 262. Love my 1988 Jimmy. Boarded over 355 pistons, bigger MPFI spider injectors. Can't wait to turbo it. That'll be good. .305 in the 80 Corvette used 416 head castings. Is that a 202 head? Richard, could you safely run valvoline VR1 oil in an NA LS1, or would that be too thick and strain the motor? It won't strain the motor. What is the viscosity of VR1? I've never used it, but don't they have different different strains of that, different viscosity combinations? Uh, 267, Ron, 267 was listed. I listed that. That's a 3.5 by 3.45. Yeah, 262 was the original one. And they had a 265 and a 267. The 265 has a 3-inch stroke. Arc, it wasn't a 202, it was a 194 head. How much volume of oil does it take to cause issues with overfilling? I don't know what you mean. If you overfill it by a quart, is that what you're asking? We adjust it in about half-quart increments when we're doing it on the dyno. When we're doing, and it's mostly big block stuff where we have that problem. The 01 was using it 2050. We've run 2050 in LS stuff before. It's not necessary, but we have. If you want to bring, if you have an old tired truck and you want to bring the oil pressure up, 2050 will do that. Larry, the 85 Corvette had forged pistons in. I had an 85 tune port, the iron-headed L98. So where are we at on our poll? So we're at, is the 307 Chevy better engine to build than a 305? 53% saying yes. $267, yeah, had the 350 stroke. It was 3.48. Casey, you need a longer dipstick. Yours doesn't reach the oil anymore. I hate it when that happens. I think some of the smaller ones would be cool, although I have run the L99 a lot, so that's been done. How much oil volume did you add before you saw a negative effect on power windage? If it's a quart over, you'll start having problems. Ram truck, can a stock LS3 cam swap into a stock LS engine and create more horsepower and torque? If only somebody had tested all of the stock camshafts so that you could answer that question about any factory LS camshaft. That video is already up. And yes, a stock LS3 cam will add power to compared to a stock 5.3 or 4.8 camshaft. It makes more power, a good bit more. It loses power down low and gains it at the top. Although it's not a very easy swap unless you're swapping it into a Gen 4 4.8 or 5.3, because of what you have to do with the cam sensor, and I think that the LS3 is a single bolt cam too, a single bolt timing gear. .305 came in the Camaro. .305s did come in Camaros and Z28s. That's what we're talking about. The L69 is a .305. So was the LB9. They had lots of .305s in them. .307s came in 69 Camaro, Chevelles, and Novas. Victor, I just got a truck with a 6.0. I'm trying to see what's the best thing to do for it. If you're talking about wheels and tires and stuff, you can do all that. But for power, the best thing to do to it is a camshaft and springs, or boost, depending on how much power you want. Yeah, Victor, there's lots of 6-liter tests up now, so you can take a look at that. I mean, you could, there's 6-liter stuff for any kind of build that you would want to do. Victor, you got to go pick one. I don't know what kind of power curve you want and that stuff. So that's why I do the channel and give you hundreds of choices up there, and you can go look and go, oh yeah, I want that curve, I want that curve, I want that curve. Yep, you just have to decide what you're using it for. Do you want, a lot of guys don't want to change the converter, so that means, okay, your cam is going to be on the mild end of the spectrum. You still get big gains because an LS wants more camshaft, so almost anything that you put in it is going to be a good gain. But if you don't want the chop and you don't want to change the converter, then it will be on the mild end of the scale. Lucky for you, you have a 6-liter, so that gives you more choices, even with staying with a stock converter, than you would have if you had a 4.8, because you can't put very much cam in a 4.8 and still keep the stock converter. Grooves, you're steering them down the wrong rabbit hole. So you want all the duration, all the lift, and the tightest LSA you can find. Karlov, I know that they did. His question was, did they? I see. I mentioned the fact that they meant VTEC only cams without the primary lobe on stuff. They did it. I know that they did it on B series, but I don't know if they did it for K series stuff. Skunk may have cams like that. Oliver, just have him look up visors graphs for picking the LSA. Yeah, that'd be good. It's good for power. It might not be good for all the other things, though. Benny Hanna loves the chop. The chop master. Choposaurus Rex. Chopalama Ding Dong. It would be an expensive test, but it would need to see a small block Chevy test where the only thing that changes is the valve degree of the heads. So if you're changing the valve angle, are you necessarily going to change flow too? Because that's why you do that. Interesting. And without increasing intake cam flow, any gains to be had with only VTEC lift and duration. And without increasing intake cam flow, I don't know. I don't understand. Well, I don't know what you mean by intake cam flow. Are there any gains to be had with only VTEC lift and duration? If you change the cam timing, you can gain power. If that's your question, it doesn't, and it doesn't matter if you don't change the head flow, which I think is what you're saying. Oliver, 105 LSA. You mean 105 LSA isn't good for power brakes or a nice quiet idle? It is, but you have to run 2 of them. So that way you have 110, and then you can get the idle that you want. Richard, a while back I asked you for a recommendation or a camshaft for my LS1, and you recommended the 54454-11 227 cam. So I went with it and absolutely love it. See, somebody, I did the right cam, so I can make a right cam T-shirt now. I'm glad it worked out. That's a good cam. It makes good power. On K series, VTEC is exhaust only. On all of K series, they don't have intake VTEC also. You sure about that? Have you thought about what you could achieve with a tiny bore small block Chevy as a 267? The problem with the small bore small block Chevys is that they're very, very head specific. So there's a limit to what kind of cylinder head you can put on there. So then they're limited in power, not just by their displacement, because the displacement does other things too. It makes it so that it's hard for you to get compression unless you have a dome piston, which throws off flame travel and creates issues. Unless you have a really, really small combustion chamber, which luckily a lot of the small bore heads do. But there's not a lot of aftermarket support. So if you have a stock head, then you have to end up porting a stock head, which is still not great. So there are some small bore heads like the Trick Flow Super 23, the 175 that you can use on a 305. What's a 267? 3.5. That's really, really small. I just think that you would be limited by the head flow on that kind of thing. And Karlov, you're no extra lobe timing only. So it's variable cam only on the intake, but no VTEC. I have to look that up. But either way, if you change the camshaft, you put a different camshaft in there that's not VTEC, you can definitely make more power. It doesn't sound like Honda making VTEC on only one side. Maybe they're thinking that with a variable cam that they can get away with that. You need a maybe option on the pole. That's why it's near 50-50 right now. Butcher, every suggestion you gave me about my Spirit was dead on, as well as a few suggestions you gave me on the keg intake on the 360. I'm glad. I'm going to do more stuff on the keg. I think the keg's kind of limited too. The bigger the bore, well, bigger than 3.5. so if you can get a bore size that allows you to use a cylinder head that's available that flows more than a stock head, that would be good. As you go up in bore size, your availability of heads for performance applications get much greater. I still want to see you do boost on a 3.4 twin cam. I wish I would have, although I would really like to have cams done for that motor too. We did bigger throttle bodies and ported intake and headers. I don't remember if we did. I think we did tuning on it and a dual exhaust, but I don't think we did a head. I don't think we did a ported head on that. Swapping an LM7 4L60 into an 84 C10, could you recommend stall and rear gear? I don't know what size tire it is, but for a truck, a 373 or a 410 seems to be pretty popular, and still can be used with the overdrive, obviously, in that. Because a lot of times they use big tires in those. And a stall is going to be 25 to 2,800 probably. Michael, so there's a bunch of you with wrong cams having fun. Perfect. Sometimes the wrong one is the right one. Yeah, Butcher, a dual plane is really, as you saw from the Engine Masters testing and other stuff, that's it's kind of the way to go. Can I use cheap head bolts on the LS swap, or do I need ARP? I only use ARP stuff because I think that I want serious clamping force. It might be that that's the wrong decision. You might be able to get away with lots of stuff. I have run boost on the dyno many times with stock head bolts. Matt over at Sloppy's done it a bunch. The only time I've tried to use cheap head bolts from various sources out there, I don't remember doing it for an LS. We did it for small block and big block. And when we did, they were really stretchy. We ruined a bunch of the bolts just trying to torque them. And so I just tend to be a little bit gun shy maybe and stay away from those. Richard, why'd you sell your 85 Corvette? That was long ago when I was working for All Chevy magazine. But what did I get after that? Oh, I think I had the Silver Bullet after that, which was and the Silver Bullet was actually gifted to me, kind of gifted to me. My roommate said at the time, he said he was getting another car, and so he had this Honda, and the Honda was an Accord, and it had it was a 5-speed, except it didn't have 5th gear, and you had to skip third gear because it was really notchy. So it was a 1-2-4 shift, and then you had to leave it in 4th gear. You couldn't use 5th. And it smoked fairly bad because it was old and tired. So we called it the silver bullet because one day he went out and got that the chrome stuff in a can and painted it. And when he first did it, it was so bright in the sun you couldn't even look at it. And I'm like, wow, that's like super bright. But he said, if you'll go get the food, I don't even remember. These were like Jack in the Box tacos. This was not anything exotic. So if you'll go get it, you could have the silver bullet. So I did, and then I had that. So that was after the Corvette. So it might have been a little bit of a step down. That car was also one of the ones that was in the flood in Huntington Beach. So it filled up fairly high. So it had mold and all kinds of stuff, and it was an adventure. Did Mopar make an M1 EFI intake? Yeah, they did. I've run that intake manifold because it came on that intake is the one that came on the crate motors that they sold. But the problem with that intake is it's terrible compared to a beer keg. It makes more power, like it's a real high RPM kind of thing. It's like a 7,000 RPM deal. And so it loses, like every short runner intake manifold, it loses a bunch down low. And now that I say that out loud, I think maybe I'm thinking that that's a Hemi manifold that I'm thinking of, and not the not the Magnum manifold. No, I take that back. That is the Magnum, right? It is, because Dulcich loaned me his motor. I think I'm gonna have to go look now. Now I'm all confused. Instachrome. It was blinding. And you should have seen me, the 124 skip shift. That's what we called it. You should see me trying to explain that to people who I would let borrow, because I didn't even care about the car, who I would let borrow the car to go get something. Okay, okay, look, there's no fifth gear, so just forget about fifth. Fifth is not even on the table. Now, third gear, I don't even use. You can. It just takes like a couple Mississippis to get into third. So it's better just to one, two, maybe pull second a little higher than you would, and then go fourth, and then you're golden. And so trying to explain it to people was quite an adventure. Eric, you're looking to build a 496. What I would do is not build a Mark IV block. One, they're harder to find. The other thing is I don't think that they're stronger. I would use a Gen 6 block. You could find lots and lots of those, and if you break it, you just go get another one. There's lots and lots of those in the wrecking yard. They're all 4 bolts. They came with a hydraulic roller cam from the factory. And depending on how much power you want with turbos, it has a decent set of heads on it. So you can make fairly good power with a cam in those heads, especially if you were to port them. If you're putting aftermarket heads on, it will still take that. And you have a hydraulic roller. The one downside to the Gen 5 and Gen 6, some of the early Gen 5s had them, but the Gen 5 and Gen 6 don't have a provision for a mechanical water pump. So I don't know what you're using for that, but that's something to think about. William, I recently bought someone's old project Street Strip 71 Mach 1. Nice. I hope it turned into a boss with a heavy cam. Is there any way to find out the lift and duration? Without pulling the cam, the lift is easy to find. You can just put a dial indicator on or measure with a micrometer. You can just spin the camshaft so the lift, so the push rod's all the way down. This is what I did on the Pontiac, and unsuccessfully, might I add, because if you see the photo, the thumbnail that I put up, it's of the air gap between the lifter and the camshaft, because the lifter is not flat anymore. It's see-through. So the lifter had worn a lot on the trophy 4-cylinder. That's the photo that I put up. We were supposed to talk about that. So here I am telling everybody that I measured all the things. And when I was measuring them, I thought that 4 of them, the intakes, and then the exhausts were 330 lift, and the intakes were less than that. turns out maybe I wasn't exactly as accurate as I thought. And some of them were worn and some of them were not. And I think all of them were supposed to be the same. At any rate, a few of the lifters were worn. The camshaft is probably worn. Although the camshaft not as bad as the lifters. The lifters were ones that took the abuse. So we're going to, my options now are to have, I wanted to have a cam ground anyway, so we could send that to Delta Cam and have it reground. The guys from the machine shop, Dave over there, said we do that all the time. But that would mean that I need to get another stock trophy 4-cylinder camshaft, because I do want to run a stock one so we can see what the change in power is from the camshaft. That's a Honda you know won't get stolen. Somebody tried to break into it. They broke the wing window in the back, and the odd thing is that there was no radio in it, and I left it open just so nobody would break a window if they wanted to break into it, so they wouldn't break into it, so they could just open it up. There wasn't ever anything in there worth stealing. I mean, I ended up trading that car for a 2JZ Supra intercooler. Don't get excited, for a 2JZ Supra intercooler, just the intercooler, and this was back when they were getting them from the wrecking yard, so it was cheap. So I traded that car for the intercooler, and I was mad that I left like $5 or $6 worth of gas in it. And I may have left like 70 or 80 cents worth of change in the ashtray as well. Eric, if you're only going to 6,000 RPM, I don't think I'd put a solid in it. I think I would put a hydraulic roller in it. Yeah, Vash is pitted. You get points for that. Maybe they were breaking out. They could have been homeless, maybe. See, you got all excited about the super thing, right? But the intercooler was cool, and I used to just carry it around because I wanted to make like a little lunchbox out of it stuff, because it was, it was cool. It was the biggest intercooler I had, and I think that the only times I ever used it, I used it on like Mad Max kind of turbo above the hood line kind of things. Like we would take the hood and fold it back and make intercooler stuff, like when I was doing turbo testing over it. And thanks again for Steve at Powertrain Dynamics for letting me do dumb things. So I would bring the Del Sol over there and we'd run a turbo on it, a bunch of different turbos, and then we'd use that air-to-air intercooler and just run ducting from the turbo to that intercooler, just sitting up in the air, and then over to the throttle body. It didn't have to be anywhere where it was grabbing air, and then we just aim a fan at it. So it spent most of its life like out in open air, being an intercooler, and it was kind of cool. So did I even have a Supra? No, I didn't have a Supra. I don't have Supra money. I didn't even have Supra intercooler money. I had Silver Bullet money that was basically Jack in the Box taco money. So to me, I look at it as I traded up. So I got tacos, for tacos, I got a Civic, and then I got a Supra intercooler. So I'm thinking that's a win-win for me. What's your experience with fabricated intake manifolds? Guesstimated runner lengths. They work, but that's why when I make mine, I make them adjustable so that you can test them and find out which length you like the best. They're all going to work. Every length that you put on there is going to do something. It just might not be in the RPM range that you want. And so if you make it adjustable and try it, it's a good deal. But I mean, you have to admit, though, Jack in the Box tacos really are good. So we'll go ahead and close out our poll. It's really close. Is a 307 Chevy better engine to build than a 305? 52% saying yes and 48% saying no. And we will end our poll there. Very close. Lots of 305 and 307 love there. How much power do you think you make out of a stock 454 block? We've done 12 or 1,300 so far, I think. Runner length is halfway from stock and skunk 2. That's probably good then. Haven't seen too many long runner fabricated intake manifolds. Just take a look at the videos I have up of all of the Super Richie variable runner intake manifolds. I've got some really long ones, some that are 20 inches long. They're not Holley Skyram though, but they're 20 inches. Is there a horsepower difference between the high ram and ultra low ram intake manifolds? I've not tested an ultra low ram, but I would bet $1 million that there is. Eric, I'm sure you want to know what I gap the rings at for boost. 6.5 thousandths or so per inch of bore is usually what I set them to. You've seen the 535 compressed natural gas engines on eBay, forged block, wiped out lifters and cams for $2,000. I have not seen those. Engine Masters just did a test about the ultra low and the high ram. Yeah, I talked to them a little bit about that. The Skyram was a 3D printed one. I think that they gave that one away. Are LS7 lifters problematic for LQ9? No, they're not. Yeah, the steak sandwiches from Jack in the Box. That's right. That's OG stuff. And if you really go back, you remember who was they used to have the little guys like the Hamburglar and stuff, but it was for the Jack in the Box guys. They've had the little onion ring guy, and they had Jack. They had a bunch of them. We used to get little bendable versions of those. And the tacos are soy. so they're actually good for you. Right. Sourdough grills are good. I like the sourdough grilled chicken too. How about a DZ302 board 40 over to a 307? That would make a really good 307 then, right? Yep. Del Taco's good stuff. Although I like Taco Bell tacos better than Del Taco tacos. Although I like the beef burritos at Del Taco. One more minute. Got the gangster lean going on. Taco Bell's across the street in the Baja Blast. They do. The Baja Blasts are good. Yeah, the flings. Yep. Josh, yours will be the last comment or last question. On an NA LS3 with GPI stage 4 cams, I got lots of cam and a Holley high ram, 4-inch cold air, E85. What bar map, 1 or 2 in speed density or MAF? All of those will work. I don't know what you're tuning it with. We use aftermarket ECUs when we do stuff on the dyno. So I don't know what you have in there to tune it with, but you don't need anything more than a 1-bar map sensor for an NA motor. So you don't need a 2-bar. You can tune it with speed density, or you can tune it with a mass airflow meter if you're doing the factory stuff. But if you're going to do it with a mass air meter, make sure that the mass air meter is big enough that it's not going to restrict what's going on with the rest of that motor. If you put a factory mass air meter on there, it's probably going to be too small and going to be kind of restrictive. So maybe there's a bigger one that you can put in there. Or if you have the option just to go speed density and not use a mass air meter so that it's not restrictive, that's also an option. And on that note, I am out, and I will see you guys all tomorrow. I got to get some more videos up and get going now that I'm back. I'm back in the saddle, and I'm out. Thank you guys all for showing up.